So a very good morning to one and all who had gathered here. Today we have with us Dr. P. Simon sir, who is currently working as an associate professor in NIT Trichy. So Dr. Simon sir completed his Bachelor of Engineering in Electrical and Electronics Engineering from Bardiyar University in 1999. He has completed his Master of Engineering in Applied Electronics from Bardiyar University in the year 2001. He has obtained his doctoral degree in the Department of Electrical and Electronics Engineering from Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee in the year 2006. He had started his academic career as a lecturer in Karunya Institute of Technology from November 2000 to 2002. He has joined as a research scholar in IIT Roorkee from 2002 to 2006. He has been the assistant professor in the EEE department of NIT Trichy from 2006 to 2018. Currently, he is working as an associate professor in the Department of Electrical and Electronics Engineering in NIT Trichy since 2018. He has published a total of 66 journals, out of which 48 are ACI and Scopus indexed publications, 30 are ACI indexed, and 18 others. His area of interests include power systems and applications of soft computing technique for power system optimization. He has published a book called Soft Computing with MATLAB Programming, Oxford University Press in the year 2015. He has completed 4 sponsored projects and currently has 2 ongoing projects. Dr. Simon sir has 5 patents to his credit. He is a member of System Society of India, Indian Society of Technical Education, and Solar Energy Society of India. So on behalf of the Electrical and Electronics Engineering Department of Kamaraj College of Engineering and Technology, we extend a very warm welcome for this session, sir. The session is yours, sir.
Thank you, madam. Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
I'll just share my screen. Yeah, so just you can check it whether it is visible or not. Is it visible?
The desktop screen is visible. Yes, sir, it's visible now, sir.
Yeah, because I just want to show the desktop, so that will be useful. Okay, good morning to one and all.
Excuse me, sir, but we are seeing some 1.5 slides, sir. 1 slide and half slide is at the side.
That is okay. That is okay. That is not an issue.
Okay,
But you're able to see the main slide, right?
yes, sir, we are able to
I
see.
able to keep on change that. That's not an issue.
Okay, sir.
Okay,
Okay, sir. Thank you.
so good morning once again, and thank you for the introduction, Reena madam. Thank you. So thank you for giving me an opportunity for this delivering the lecture. So especially the topic is, I think the workshop domain is basically of deep learning and machine learning in electrical engineering. So I was just thinking about why not we can have a topic on demand response management using deep neural networks. So of course, when I talk about deep neural networks, it talks about your deep learning algorithms that will come. And when I talk about this demand response management, it comes under smart grid environment. Okay, so both the things I can give. So the smart grid and all is basically electrical applications only. So how to use these deep learning neural networks in a smart grid environment. Okay, so that is what I am going to discuss in today's lecture. So to start with, what I'll do, I'll just give a brief introduction about the architecture of simple neural networks. And there are certain few activation functions of these deep neural networks. And what is the conventional neural networks that was really good, for the past decades, it is able to give us very good results, because that is our standard backpropagation neural networks. Okay, so that also I will try to discuss. And what are the developments of recurrent neural networks and its architecture? Earlier you had certain kinds of architecture like Jordan, Hellman backpropagation neural network, Hopefield neural network. These are all certain recurrent neural networks that we had. And what is the problem of those recurrent neural networks? Okay, and then why we are going for deep learning neural networks, that we'll try to discuss. Then I will tell you why what is meant by long short-term memory deep neural network. Maybe I will tell you, because this architecture, when you see the long short-term memory and gated recurrent unit, both are almost similar. Okay, but only the computations in the gated recurrent unit is less compared to long short-term memory, and its performance is almost same. But in certain applications, sometimes this gated recurrent unit would be slightly better than long short-term memory. Mostly this long short-term memory is also good, but only in terms of, when you talk about computation, it is slightly, burden when compared to gated recurrent unit deep neural networks. Then I'll discuss about what is that we are really doing ahead with the smart grid environment, especially the demand response management, and how we are going to do the forecasting applications in using electrical load, using the data that we collected at NIT Trichy. And I'll also tell you how you can implement it with the help of MATLAB. After discussing everything, and if you are not able to implement, it will be very difficult. And I'll also tell you how it can be implemented. So these are the contents of my presentation. So coming to the first thing, this is a biological neural network. We are all familiar with nowadays with neurons, all these things. Especially, we know brain is a place where you're having millions and millions, billions of neurons. Okay, these neurons are being connected, like a neural forest that makes, and whenever the information is processed between these neurons, then our brain functions intelligently, and even that learning capability and all these things comes from this connections, billions and billions of neurons getting connected with each other. Okay, so if you look at, the basic constituents of these neural networks are basically the dendrites, synapses, and cell body and axon. So dendrites, basically it receives the information or the input signals, and especially it receives that information from synapse, from axon. Okay, so you can see here, these are the dendrites. Okay, and you can see certain bulging things, you can see. Okay, this bulging part, basically that is place what we call it as synapses. And you're having cell body, so this full together, this whole thing together constitutes your cell body, where you do certain kinds of processing of information or certain kinds of computation, and then finally the output signal is passed through this axon. Okay, so that is what okay, you can understand. Finally the output signal, okay, will be passed through the axon. So here, when it comes reaches at this particular point, that is the synapses, okay, it gives the output, again it will be kind of given to the dendrites. So in a way, you can see the processing of information is unidirectional in nature. And you think about when more millions, billions of neurons getting connected, the way it processes information, you can able to see learning takes place. So that is what, very much important when it comes to deep learning. Okay, again, if you see, these are some of the things that I was talking about. I'm not going too much into biological aspect, I'm just revisiting certain funda so that it will be easy for you to understand the importance of your deep learning strategy. So it's basically, information is passed, unidirectional information. So here at the end, you can see some kind of a synaptic transmission. So this is the dendrite, this is the receiving site, that is receptor site. So from the axon, it is coming over here, and the dendrites receives. So, but actually these dendrites are nothing but the input nodes, okay, and these auxin are basically the output nodes, and the cell body is basically your node, or sometimes we can call it an agent or unit or so many things, okay. And there are certain transmission of information is taking place, that is taken with help of these neurotransmitter molecules. So whenever the information is coming over here, there are certain sacs over here. The sacs consider the neurotransmitter molecules. Due to the sodium, potassium, concentration, what will happen? Sometimes this, the not sometimes the sac will burst, and the neurotransmitter molecules will be, thrown, and it will be received at the dendrite. Of course, there are, that is how the communication is taking place. Basically, it is chemical one only. It's a chemical kind of communication only, and especially whenever the net signal, you'll be getting information from so many inputs, okay. So whenever the information is being collected, that becomes a net signal, and whenever the net is greater than a threshold level, you know the information is passed. So it doesn't mean that how much more, even if it is 1 by 1 vote, he can be an MLA. That is what we know in the election processing, how it is being done. Even if a person is able to win by 1 vote, so he'll be the MLA, or you know a minister, he will be winning in the election. So similarly, when the net signal is greater than the threshold, it is doesn't mean that how much threshold, just greater than the threshold, immediately the signal will be fired. So this is how the information is being processed. So come to the biological neural networks to artificial neural networks. So this area basically forms the dendrites. I was talking about the input, and you can see the cell body, it receives information from various sources, and it just be net, the sum, it will be summed together. And when the sum is greater than a threshold level, that is what we call it as activation. Okay, this is what we call it as activation. When it's greater than a threshold level, immediately a signal is being processed at the axon. So now you can see here, little bit better, you can see it here. So here you can see these are the inputs, and you can see the inputs are input to this node is connected by weights. What is these weights? Weights are basically the connection strength between your input node and to the hidden node. So here it is the node one, the summing junction you are having. So basically it gives you the strength of these two nodes, okay. The strength of the two nodes are important. Basically it helps in learning, okay. It tries to adapt itself. The weights are being modified so that it tries to learn the target output. If when I say that, you're going in a car in a highway, and you're able to see at the longer distance, you're able to see a crowd, okay. So immediately what do you think? The first thing that will come into your mind is it may be an accident, okay. Maybe then you feel that it's not like that, then immediately you start thinking that it can be a some kind of a function or a procession, okay. Or sometimes, so like that you may think it. Why you are able to think it? You're able to think it because of your past experiences. The past experiences are basically your historical data. Okay, all these machine learning and deep learning algorithms, basically they take this particular data in order to take good decisions. That is where you are able to bring out so many domains like data mining, data analytics, okay, and all these things, okay. And you need lot of data. Without data you cannot take smart decisions. That is why the government and all these people are really interested in your data. Even the private players, not even one day you can see these bank people you will be calling, it will be all fake calls. Okay, we have to block it. They keep on calling. Our information, they got it through some sources. Their aim is to get to know our whole behavior. They know what kind of things you like it, what kind of interest you are having. Okay, even the kind of color, whether you like red or blue, the kind of things you purchase, they take your characteristics, that is what we call as features. Not everything they need, they want to pick up the right data so that they can take the best decision. So the same thing we are doing in electrical engineering application also. We will have to deal with lots of data when it comes to machine learning and deep learning. So here we are having a processing tool called the neural networks. So basically, it will you'll be having certain data. It will try to learn the target, certain objective will be there, or certain data already it will be mapped. If this is a scenario, this will be the output, or if this is the symptoms, this will be the disease, already it will be mapped, that is what the knowledge. And we don't need much about how you're able to attain that knowledge. Suppose if you do control system and all these things, you have to really know the mathematical model, otherwise very difficult. So when you're using these kind of non-linear processing intelligent techniques like these neural networks, only what you need is basically the features, input features and the out target features, so that you can make these patterns learn for that particular target. Okay, so you may have a source and you may have a target data, and if similar kind of input data is there, what will be the target? Okay, so that is, we have to, that is what we are trying to do. So these are certain things, when it comes to biological neuron and all the synaptic interactions. Synaptic efficiency is basically the weights. Activity of the auxin is nothing but the units output, and the influences of synapses and auxins. So all these things are the terminologies used in this artificial neural network. Just to say some of the classifications, because we want to know where this recurrent neural networks comes into picture, because that is very much important when it comes to deep learning neural networks. So here if you see, you can see some activation functions, some kind of architectures, you can see how the patterns are being connected. So this is a single layer ANN. Okay, you are able to see only one layer of weights is there. So that is why it is called single layer neural networks. And you can see these are all few back propagation neural network. Sorry, I think I have to show these things. You can see there are, this is the conventional multi-layer ANN, where you can see you're having two layers. You can have more number of layers also. However, here you're having two layer of weights. Okay, in some books they will say that it is having three layers. They consider this input as a buffer layer, and this as the hidden layer, and this as the output layer. But however, we can always tell without confusion that it is having two layer of weights. That is one from the input layer to the hidden layer, and from hidden layer to the output layer. So these are the weights that we have to update, train, so that to map the your input patterns and the target patterns, or input features and the target features. So there are different types of ANN you are having. You have been able to see it. And interesting thing, we are interested in this recurrent architecture. That is where your deep learning techniques, deep learning neural networks come into picture. So here you can see that there is certain connection, feedback connections are there. This is a backpropagation neural network. You'll be having an input layer, you'll be having hidden layer, and you'll be having an input layer, hidden layer, and output layer you're having. And you can see some kind of a connections here. You can see is recurrent connection, is a feedback connection within the hidden layer. So this particular thing is called as Elman backpropagation neural network. Similar kind, you can see the here Hopfield neural network. You can see there is a continuous input being sent into these nodes, and you can see the output is again fed back to the output of the other neurons. So you can see a kind of recurrent connection, a feedback connection is there. So that is the reason these architectures are called recurrent neural networks. These neural networks which is having this feedback architecture is called recurrent neural networks. So whenever you see, this is a simple example. you can see you are having an input here, you are having an output, you're able to see a feedback connections you're able to see here, and this is a decision output you can get. Of course, you're having input layer, hidden layer, and output layer. Okay, so now coming back to the activation function, I told if the net input is greater than the threshold, then the signal is fired. How mathematically it is being done? It is being done with the help of this activation function or threshold function, or sometimes we call it a decision functions also. So there are certain standard types of functions that is already available. So here you can see this is one example, identity function. It's a linear function. The output depends upon the input. When the input increases, it is a function of your sum. Okay, so if I put function of this input, then sum is the one that you're able to get. So it's something like that. Whenever it's a linear function, this is the only linear function you're having, or sometimes a standard one, it's called purely nor identity function, and these functions are available in MATLAB also. Okay, and you're having binary step function is there. So you're having all these things like what is a binary step function? If the net is greater than or equal to a threshold value, then 1 is fired. If the net is less than a threshold, then 0 is fired. So similarly, you can see log sigmoidal function, the output will be between 0 to 1. Okay, 0 to 1. Okay, 1 and 0. So there are bipolar function. The output will be between 1 to -1. So you're having different types of activation functions are there. We'll try to use those. Okay, but even if you want, you can create your own types of activation function. Okay, now when you really look into that, what is it I am talking about this activation function is, I just want to talk about certain functions that we use in deep learning neural networks, which were not used before in the case of, conventional neural network learning. So these are the things that we have been using, sigmoid function. Okay, and it has got both, you can have binary output, you can have continuous real valued output, you can have, and the first derivative of the sigmoid function should be non-negative or non-positive. So all these things are you know you can get it with the advantages of this sigmoidal function. Mostly when it comes to conventional neural networks, they will use this sigmoidal function. But when it comes to you know uh, uh, these deep learning strategy, they are using softmax function, ReLU. It's not that I'm telling that they will not use other types of function, but ReLU and all these things, these are some of the functions that helps for better learning and better decision making. So that is why they're using these kinds of softmax functions. So the output will be between 0 to 1. The sum of all probabilities should be equal to 1. Okay, it is used in all kinds of logistic regression models. Okay, when I say these regressions and decision trees, all these things, you can think about machine learning also. Okay, and whenever the number of layers in the neural network is more, that is where, or the complexity is more, that is why we are calling it as deep neural networks, where deep learning is taking place. Okay, so these are some of the things you have to know. So these are some of the ways how you can process the information for this activation function. You can just multiply the input with your output weights, and you can get the sum. And if the sum is greater, if the sum is greater than the threshold, then the output is fired. Okay, so these are some of the things. Okay, if you want, you can just do it, and you can look into it. So before going into the thing, I just want to talk about feed forward neural networks. This is your the decisions are based on current inputs. So here when it comes to feed forward networks, there is no memory of the past and no future scope. When you will be able to uh, whenever you take a decision, it will be always better if you are able to keep the output responses of previous historical data, so that you can connect it and you can relate it and you can take a decision. So one of the disadvantage of these feed forward neural networks is that you know uh, there is no feedback is not there. The feedback is not there. Any the feedback is not there. And in a way, whenever you take a decision, it is not taking a decision based upon its past inputs or the past memory. Okay, though there are certain tuning mechanisms like momentum and all these things are there, when you try to back propagate the error, we only fine tune the error, but however, the past inputs are not considered in taking a decision. So that is one of the major problem in the case of feed forward neural network. So the output will be equal to, if you are able to see the sum of the number of inputs, that is I is equal to 1 to n. So you keep on multiplying with the weights, and also you're having connecting a bias. Bias basically helps you in learning to take a better decisions. Okay, so as a whole, this whole thing together forms your net. Okay, and your y will be is equal to a of net. So it's such a beautiful thing that you're able to get an output. Okay, output signal when you send the net signal into the activation function. So the next thing is that very important thing, because this is what we do in the case of conventional backpropagation neural network. I'll just explain this concept, and we have to understand the disadvantage of this conventional backpropagation neural network, and then only it will be really worth to understand what is done by the LSTM and all these things. So here, if you see this backpropagation neural network, you can see these are the input buffer layer, hidden layer, and output layer. So this information is being processed. Okay, and let us assume that there are different types of learning. Okay, one is you are having supervised learning, and another one is unsupervised learning, and there is something called reinforced learning. Okay, when it comes to supervised learning, basically it is used for regression and forecasting applications. Basically what you do, you try to train is, you'll be having some input patterns and the corresponding output patterns. The corresponding output patterns are basically the target. You try to map these two things, and a test input you give, and you'll be getting output. So you're having both the the input patterns and the target patterns already. That is a historical data, and you train it, and you're able to, once the training is over, we have to take new test inputs, and we have to get input the data, and you'll be able to get the output. Okay, and even during the training also, what you can do, you can do validation. Validation is very simple. Just like that, how whenever we cook food, when you try to cook, we try to take one rice and check whether the food is cooked or not. I think we all do it, right? So similarly, we will have some uh, data separately taken within the training set. It is not the testing data. Within the training data itself, we take some 5% or 10% of data, and even during the training, we'll try to check it whether you're able to get the better output, or whether the error is being reduced or converged. That is what you're trying to do. So here, we try to process. Okay, the input is coming. So here there is one activation function and output activation function, and we choose the activation function in such a way that it is both the target and the output is almost at the same range, so that it will be easy. So sometimes you have to normalize. That is where you try to do the processing of this data. So the output, suppose you take a bipolar sigmoidal function, the output will be between -1 to 1. Suppose you take a log sigmoidal function, the output will be 0 to 1. That is activation function. So the output will be between 0 and 1 for a log sigmoidal function. Log sigmoidal function, or it will be 1 by 1 plus e power minus net. Okay, so if that is the case, then what you will do, you have to subtract. So even the source patterns also, then you have to normalize it between 0 to 1. So then only the output will be also in the same range of your target. Okay, the normalized target. So you'll be able to get the difference between the actual output and the desired output. okay, and that is the error. So generally whenever we try to, this error has to be back propagated in so that the weights are being updated, and again what we are expecting is this error should be coming down. So that is what you're actually, error, and this error has to be back propagated in updating these weights or tuning the weights so that we'll be able to make the error very less. So that is the same thing that we are doing it here. Okay, so though it is called back propagation, it doesn't mean that it is a recurrent network. Only is the error is back propagated and we are updating the weights between the input layer to the hidden layer and hidden layer to the output layer. So this is what we are trying to do. So here you are being able to see the comparison, the error will be there. So here what is it actually we are trying to do? Suppose you try to take a simple, you can, yeah. So this is the error that you're having. Generally we take squared error because we want to know what is the quantity of the error. Okay, so even if you want to do certain kinds of optimization of these weights, okay, we can use gradient based optimization techniques. That is a conventional based optimization techniques. We do it like this. So generally we take the squared error, so that this error will be back propagated and we update the weights. So what are the weights we have to update? We have to update the weights between the hidden layer to the output layer, and then we have to update the weights between your input layer and your hidden layer. So the first part we will do this part, and the second one we can do it this one. So in a way that we will try to update both the weights so that the error will be brought down. And every time, you can see there is certain kinds of learning taking place here. So you can represent it by eta or any learning coefficient. Okay, so based upon the learning coefficients, the step size of the weights will be updated. Okay, so here you can see this is how we are trying to calculate. So this is the change in weights. You're having a old weight. The old, suppose if I want to find out the new weight will be equal to old weight plus the change in weight. So that is what we are trying to do. Okay, old weight plus the change in weight. So here what is that we want to do? Based upon this error, we want to update these weights. And one thing you have to understand is that we are keeping this negative sign. Why? Because we are adding this term to your old weight. So whenever you update it, we have to move opposite to the direction of the error. Here, ultimately we try to tune these weights. So error has to be, whenever I do something about these weights, that is where the error will be reduced. Now whenever, suppose let us assume you change the weights in this direction, the error will be moving in the opposite direction. Okay, so that is what you understand. Suppose you want to bring the error in this direction, then the weight will be moved in this direction. So always the change in weights will be opposite to the direction of the error gradient so that we can minimize the error. So that is why you are having the negative term. So now what we do, we can add we will be getting the new weights, that is old weight plus the change in weights. So now you can see the dou E by dou WQK. Dou WQK is nothing but the weights between the hidden layer and your output layer. Okay, so that is what you have to understand here. So one thing I will tell you, the idea here, we try to relate this dou E and dou WK. So what we try to do, first we try to relate it with the output of the function FQK. So if you really look into that, this is a sample that you've taken. So here you can see this error is basically related to F. This F is basically related to the net input, and this input is basically related to WQK. We are trying to relate it like this. It's a chain reaction basically. It's a chain connection that we are having. So it's very interesting. What we see in our college or in our university. The same thing we are having it here. So what is happening? Suppose let us assume the results are very poor. Anna University results has come or any other university results has come. The results are very poor for your class. Okay, immediately what will happen? The management will be really upset, right? why these results are poor. So the management will call the principal. Okay, this is the management, call the principal. Then the management will tell so many things, why you're doing like this and all these things. So the burden will be first on to the principal. Then after that, the principal will be interacting with your head of the department. The head of the department also really get crazy. The what is that happening between a principal and the HOD, right? Maybe it's not, I can say it's sweet firing or whatever, maybe why the results are so bad and things like that. Then the HOD will go to the faculty. The faculty, why in your class the results are so poor and things like that. So it's something like a chain reaction. Ultimately, what we have to do, we have to improve the results of the students. The students are the main stakeholders here. So here the weights are nothing but the students. You're able to understand. So if we can tune the students, okay, we can improve the the results. Okay, so that is the concept that we are having when it comes to backpropagation neural network. So if we can tune these weights, we can bring down the error, the convergence. So the training will be really good. So once the training is over, then we go for testing. So here in this case, it is supervised learning. You're having a source pattern and you're having a target patterns. In some case, you don't have a source, only you'll be having a data. You don't have target patterns. So that is the place where we try to classify or clustering. We want to group certain, in electrical engineering, what we have to, classify certain faults. Okay, whether it is line to line fault, and we want to take a quick decision. During training, the neural network will take a bit time, but once the training is over, if you give an input, immediately it can give you, within a fraction of a second, it will give an output because it is already trained. Okay, so when I say to you 1 plus 1 is equal to 2, it took lot of time in your childhood days, especially up to first standard or up to even second standard, to learn this concept for addition. 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. But once everything is trained, now if I ask you what is 1 plus 1, immediately you can tell it is 2. The same thing, the time taken is so quick. That is another advantage of this neural network learning when it comes to decision making. So all these advantages are there. Okay, how the weights are being updated and all this there. So coming to this feed forward network, already I told. Okay, so I already told, it will not have a relationship between past output and the present output. So that is not available in the case of feed-forward network. That is only available in the case of recurrent neural network. There are so many activities when it comes, like reading a book and all these things. You cannot, unless you read the nth page. Then when you read the n plus 1, it will be a continuity of the nth page. Then you will have a better understanding and better learning. If you suddenly come to a, you're just, let us assume that you're coming to a lecture in between now, then you will never understand what I am talking. Unless you're having a continuity in the previous data, then only you will be able to understand what I am talking right now. If you come in between, you may not be able to understand what is the context that I am trying to discussing with you. So these are some of the things. So feed forward neural networks, you cannot have that kind of relationship. That is the problem with the feed forward neural network. I cannot predict the next word. Okay, its efficiency is very, very poor. Okay, so in the case of suppose you look at this picture, there are so many examples where your current input is related to your previous input. There are so many signals, electrical signals that you're having. Everything is in some kind of a time series signals. Let it be electricity pricing or electricity signal. Even if you take some fault signal, all these things, it's a one-dimensional signal. It's a time series signal. You can see all the current input is related to your previous input, or a current output is related to a previous output in all these time series signal. Okay, so in this particular thing, I'll be only discussing about this time series signals. You're having solar forecasting, you can forecast electricity forecasting, you can do it. Okay, all these things you can do it. Okay, but when it comes to two-dimensional data, there is another network in deep learning that we call the CNN. That is convolution neural network. So if I use it, I can say whether the ball is moving up or whether the ball is moving down. Now, that is the beauty of these kinds of networks. If you can use these networks, now there are so many things, Google Net, AlexNet, so many, deep learning networks are there. If you can use this, it is able to classify and it is able to give you all the images. So these are the beautiful things that is happening in the case of, deep learning. Even, if you tell a story, the network, let us assume that, we are all famous knowing that old lady and the cow and and the crow and the jackal and the vada, that story we all know. Okay, and 10 people, feeding the story into a network, automatically what will happen, the network itself will be able to tell you a story in a different angle. That is the beauty of these kinds of deep learning strategies. Okay, it totally is going to change. So you're having lot of sequences, you're having a series of readings are there. Okay, it can be weather forecasting, anything. We are totally dealing with renewables. When you're dealing with renewables, we have to do lot of things with respect to your weather. It can be a temperature forecasting, wind forecasting, or solar radiation forecasting, load forecasting. All these things are necessary when it comes to planning activities of power system. And even if you take in electrical system classifications and all these things, okay, even you can do. Okay, especially I told two types of decision making you can do. You can do clustering, or you can group all the types of faults and classify it. Okay, or you can predict. Okay, for prediction or forecasting, for all these things, you can use these kind of learning strategy. Okay, so these are some of the things. It can be any kind of data. A data, you can see it's a sequence of data. It can be a musical note. So the musical note will be feeling better only when you hear the previous note. Unless it is not connected properly in a chain, you will not feel it like a music. Okay, so these kinds of time series information can be used when it comes to these recurrent neural networks. So what is this recurrent neural network? It can be anything, a language. Suppose if I read this sentence, okay, unless the previous sentence I know, or previous words I know, then only the sentence will have some kind of a meaning based upon the context. Okay, so these are some of the things you have to know. So coming back to the recurrence, okay, that is where we are interested in recurrence. Okay, already we discussed about recurrence and all these things. There are so many examples are there. So here you are having a recurrent cell. Okay, so now and we already know the basic artificial neuron does not have a memory. So how to introduce a memory so that we can relate the past input or the past memories in order to take a good decision. So that is where the recurrence comes into picture. So this is a recurrent cell. We are having an internal memory. So this is an RNN unit. It has got an input and it has got an output. So here if you see, there are different recurrent layers will be there. Okay, so here you can see the same thing. The internal memory is basically nothing but your state of that particular unit. Okay, or the information stored or information saved or the remember data. All these things we can do. So in order to understand the recurrence, let us try to assume a robot repairing a mobile phone. There are two things that can happen. Okay, let us assume that you are having a broken phone. When the broken phone is sent into the robot, what will happen? The robot takes some information or some kind of tools from the cabinet and it tries to repair. So this is the one action that is taken. Once it is repaired, again the robot places the tools back into the cabinet. Okay, and it sends the repaired phone output. So there are two actions that is taking place: the robot receiving the broken phone it takes some tools, repair it. Okay, and the second action is that after repairing it, it places back the components back to the cabinet and it sends out the repaired phone. So this is two event that is happening. Now you add up these two event, in order to relate the past and the present. So you can see here, now what I'm doing, I'm just changing the arrow. Okay, so I'm just trying to have A plus B. So parts, broken phone is sent to the robot, parts is taken, and the robot is sending out, and the repaired phone is out. So it's just a cosmetic change we made it here. So now you combined both the actions and you're able to see it something like this. So now this is how I combined both the A plus B. So I'm able to see this is the one that is taking place here. Now you can see your parts are there and broken phone is there. Repaired phone is there, again the parts are being updated. So this is something that it is keep on updating. So this is the state that we are trying to look in terms of recurrence information processing. So now similarly what I done, I try to take all the things, I'm just connecting, not only the first phone repair, broken phone will go, it is an assembly, right? In production, it is an assembly. So you'll be having a broken phone, this goes to robot take the parts and it sends out the repaired phone. So it is going in a, every action by action and by action by it is going. So you can see, finally you can see these parts are being updated every time. Though it looks like a, a series of thing, but actually it is the same robot, but the number of actions that is taking place is so many, and therefore we can put it into some kind of a sequence. So now let us consider this robot as your RNN unit. Okay, so the same thing you can see it RNN unit, and you can see state RNN unit like that. So this is the structure of your recurrent neural network. I hope that this is clear. Okay, so you're having a state. So this is the state where we want to feed in the memory. Okay, so input, output, and state. This goes on like this. So now here you can see an structure of RNN. Okay, so the same thing, but you can see how the output is again fed back to the node. Okay, some delay is there, some weights are there that has to be updated. So here, if you really look at into this particular unit, you have to update the weights between this neuron and this output. Both the thing, this weight has to be updated, this weight has to be updated, this weight has to be updated. So there are three weights you are having: the weights between the input to the node and node to the output, and between the recurrence also you are having the weight. So these three weights we have to update, and that is how the processing has to be worked out. So you can see here the output weight, update weight, and input weight. So you can see some kind of a processing that is taking place in the recurrent structure. Okay, so now little bit, I'm unrolling that diagram. So the same thing, the network has become little bit bigger. Input, instead of sending the broken phone, now input 0, input 1, and input 2. So this is initial state. The state will be updated every time the actions are performed. So you take this one. So now coming to this RNN, what is happening? You're having an X of t, right? This X of t is sent to this RNN. So what will be your H of t? H of t will be equal to function of your old state. What is your old state? That is your previous weight, comma, the input xt. So that will give you your H of t. Able to understand? H of t is a new state. So we are putting into the function and we are trying to find out what is the output. So now you can see the next one. If you see it here, okay, this is an RNN unit. You're having H of t. So instead of that function, I'm using a tan h function and I'm trying to update. So here, if you see, what will be the H of t? It will be the weights of the hidden. This is the WHH, okay, hidden unit weights into the HT of n. This is nothing but the old state, old memory information, and this is the WXH, this one. So this is between your input and the RNN unit. Okay, so that will give an output here. Tan H means it is basically a bipolar sigmoidal function. That means you will be able to get an output between -1 to 1. Okay, so this manner it will go. So this is how you will be able to see how the processing is taking place. So here you can see the recurrence that is taking place here. So you can see that you are having the output you are getting. So similarly for output also you can do. So this is for your output also you can do. Output means it will be WHY into HT. Okay, now this you got, this new HT you got, this will be substituted, and already you're having the weights between RNN unit and the target, and you'll be able to do it. So you can get what is Y of t. So now when it comes to the the structure, how it is working, you can see X of t is directly related to your Y of t. The Y of t is nothing but the target, and X of t is the input. So now already there will be some target will be there. So when you subtract that actual output with your desired output, that is your loss. Your actual output is nothing but estimated output is Y naught, and your desired or the target pattern output, let us assume it will be D naught, then that is nothing but we call it as loss. Whenever in the deep learning paradigm, we are now using the error as loss. Loss is nothing but the difference between your estimated output or the actual output and the D naught, that is desired output or the target pattern. And together, we combine all the things and we can make it like a root mean square error or all these things you can try to do. So basically, I want to reduce this error. This is the aggregation of all these losses, together. I am trying to reduce this loss, and a very particular, this can be a squared loss. So many types we can. It's basically error. Loss means basically error, and this is an aggregated loss. So you can see there are some language modeling and all these things there, but however I'm not interested in that because I want to focus on the electrical applications. So you can see these are some of the old network. They are having the old Jordan network, Elman network. These are the something is there. There are different kinds of applications are there. These things I would have talked when I only dealing with deep learning. Okay, but one thing I want to understand, what is the problem with your backpropagation neural network? Okay, how the error is being updated. So in the same way, in the recurrent neural networks also error is being upgraded. Okay, one problem is that whenever it is being updated, here you can see. Suppose if we want to minimize this error, what we have to do? We have to add. You're having so many weights. You are having all these weights has to be updated. So we are having a new weight will be equal to old weight plus del W. This is how the learning is taking place. Of course, if bias is there, that also has to be updated. The input to the bias is always 1. But this is how we have to update it. But the problem is that sometimes the delta of W weight will be very large, very high, and then the learning is not taking place properly. Sometimes we want to maintain the learning, the weight between some upper limit and lower limit. The weight, it should not move beyond that. Otherwise the learning is not taking place properly. Whenever the step size is very high, the learning is not smooth. Suppose you learn just before the exam, what will happen? You won't be able to learn the way that you are learning smoothly in every day. But the just day before the exam, if you learn, it will be very difficult because the step size of learning is very high. Okay, so you can see here, we always try to maintain the learning between some upper limit to lower limit. So beyond that, beyond which we say amardam sorry, amardam if it is too much of anything is good for nothing. Okay, so that also we know. So we have to maintain that weight between some limits so the training will be smooth. So what is the problem here? Sometimes what will happen, there are two problems in our conventional backpropagation neural network. One is the exploding gradient, another one is vanishing gradient. What is these things? The exploding gradient and vanishing gradient. The exploding gradient means, we want to ultimately compute the weights, WHH and all these things. If it is so first we can go for vanishing gradient. What is happening the vanishing gradient? This del W will be very lesser and lesser and lesser than 1. Then what will happen? There won't be any change in weights. There is no learning taking place. That is the one problem that we are able to see in a conventional recurrent neural network. You're able to understand, we know the new weights are basically, W new is equal to W old plus del W. this del W is very less. It will be 0.00001. Even if you add it with the old weight, there is no significant weight change. So that kind of problem, we call it as vanishing gradient. Why it is called gradient? You can see this is error with respect to W. So it will be very, very less. That is nothing but the same. It is almost proportional to your del W. That is this one. And suppose when I say exploding gradient, here del W will be greater than and 1. So this is a problem that you are having. I hope that it is clear. So in the previous case, vanishing gradient, it will be less, but in the delta W, so what will happen in the step size is very more. Again, the learning is abrupt and the learning is not done properly. These are the two local problems when it comes to conventional recurrent neural networks. So what are the ways we can overcome? That is where we go for this deep learning neural networks. So here you are having an exploding gradient. Okay. So what we can do certain kinds of gradient clipping method we can do in order to overcome exploding gradient. Suppose vanishing gradient, how we can try to do? Again, the gradient clipping means, we need not allow beyond some limits. So that is what we call it as a gradient clipping. Okay. And here you can see, how you can overcome vanishing gradient. Maybe you can have certain kinds of activation function, there is some activation called ReLU. Okay, so because we try to process the output so efficiently using this activation function, choosing the right kind of activation function, we can reduce this problem. Or properly weight initialize. If you can initialize the weights properly during the starting of training, then it will be better. Or you may have a different kind of architecture, such that the learning, the memory is being updated properly in a RNN unit. Then if you can slightly modify the architecture, then you can solve this problem. So the network architecture is the one that I'm talking to discuss, that is planning to discuss, that is LSTM. It is called long short-term memory. So this is the architecture I'm going to do. Though there are using the right kind of activation function or proper weight initialization or gradient clipping, we can try to overcome these issues. But you can also solve using some network architecture. This is the LSTM that we are trying to do. Okay, so what is this LSTM? So one is using ReLU function. So this is a normal sigmoid function. This is a tanh function. You can see the ReLU activation function is something like this. So this is good. So this will help you to shrink the gradient effectively. It prevents, okay, getting shrinking, so that it will not become 0.0000 like that. It will not become like that. So that is one advantage. So we can, if you use ReLU function, then it will be really good. Suppose you can properly initialize the weights, so that we assume that the weights are not made to 0 or something like that. Always there will be 1 will be there. Preventing to weights becoming 0 can be prevented when you properly initialize like identity matrix. There's another method that you can do. Next comes your architecture. So this is the architecture that I am interested. This is your LSTM. Okay, so here you have to think about gates. There are certain gates called, this gate, we know it will allow certain information, or you try to take a water pipe. What will happen if you open it? It will be fully open it, the full water will go off. So this basically was similarly, 75% of the gate is open, means 75% of the water will be coming out. Okay, provided if you're having water. Okay, similarly, these gates basically control the flow of information. Okay, so this is what we try to do in the case of LSTM. How to control the information? There are 3 types of gates are there. This is a beautiful concept that you're having. One is, so okay, you can see how the gates are being processed. So this is the gate wall we are having, some kind of control you're having. So I'm multiplying 1 into 100, so 100 is coming out. So it is fully open. If it is 0.75 is open, means 0.75 into 100, only 75 is output. So in this manner, you can, if you control the gate wall position, you can control the amount of water that is coming out. But same, but you are having 3 types of gates in the LSTM architecture. One is forgetting gate, another one is remembering gate, another one is selecting gate. Certain things in our life we have to forget. Otherwise, it will be very, very difficult. You cannot take all the things into your mind. Forgetting is something that, I feel that one of the best, if if a human being is created by any power, the best thing that is that, forgetting. If you're forgetting, at least you'll be able to get some mental peace and things. Sometimes, people forget in the wrong ways by drinking alcohol. I'm not talking about that. You try to, deviate from certain things, and you try to forget certain bad things. It's one way that you can process information, and you have to remember what is good things. You have to properly remember only the good things. If you keep on remembering the bad things, the output also will bad. What is the kind of information you are getting into your mind. Okay, that is very, very important. And that is where selecting is come. What kind of information you have to choose. There are so many things in the internet. It's a garbage basically. It's a junk food that you're having. How you select the right food from the internet as a student, or as a faculty, is a challenge. You have to select the right kind of information. Maybe this LSTM is designed in this manner, I don't know. That is a philosophy I got out of this architecture. There are three types of gates. One is forget gate, another one is remembering gate, and another one is selecting gate. Okay, what is this forget gate? Suppose let us assume this is a starting memory, and this is the gate, and this is the ending memory. So you can see here, if you multiply this 16 into 0.25, you will get 4. This is ending memory. This is the gate. Gate is basically controlling the flow of information. What is already existing information is memory. So 8 into 0, 0. It's basically we are just multiplying, and your output is processed like this. So this is output. So this is a gate. You're having a memory. You're having a starting memory, processed by gate, and you're able to get an ending memory. So what is this gate? This is nothing but a forgetting gate. Okay, and the next one, if you see, this is a remembering gate. Whatever things you have to remember. Here it is slightly different. So here you can see, this one 8 into 0.5 is 4. Okay, you can see 12 into what is it happening here? So where is your starting memory is here, okay, and your ending memory is here. Okay, so here, sorry, so here this part. So you are able to see here, right? So here what is happening? Adding. Remembering means here what is happening? Something like adding. So 6 plus 10. Basically, or you do like this. 16 plus 4, 20. 8 plus 3, 11. 16 plus 0, sorry, what is the starting memory is 16. How it is done? Okay, yeah, we add it. Yeah, so sorry, here we are adding it like this. So here if you see, sorry, so here if you see, what is happening here, you can see 4 plus 16, some kind of relation. 3 plus 8, 11. Where I am missing it. Oh, sorry, here I think, yeah. Yeah, this one. And here. Yeah. I just made the match the following so that it will be easy. So basically we are adding it up and you're getting the ending memory. I hope that you understand. Okay, this is what we call it as remembering gate. Okay, so we have finished with forgetting gate, remembering gate. Another gate is basically this one. This is called selecting gate. Selecting gate is also there. Selection, we have to select the right kind of information. So here it is something like how it is taking place. This is the selected values. Okay, so if I multiply 16 into 4, I'm getting 4. Yeah, no. How it is related? Just a second. So you're having 16 into 0.75. How much you're getting? I think 12. Right?
That is
8 into 8 into 0 is equal to 0. So
sorry to interrupt.
Yes, sir.
10 into 0.4, 4, 30 into 0.25, 8.
Yeah. Same thing.
उसका भी मैंने
50 into
वो जो तुमने
0.25 is
कंप्यूटर पे
0.25.
सर्किल लगा रखे थे
32
प्लस
into
माइनस के लिए वही मैंने
0.25
सही कर
is
दिया
8
थोड़ा सा वो
and
वाला
10
फिगर,
into
ठीक है,
0.4
जो
is
आपका फिगर था
4. So this
फिगर
is
2 था जो,
your
ठीक है।
yes,
अब देखो फिगर 2
somewhere
को IVT, VTV और ITV तुम लोग सेम लाइन पे लिखा था, पता ही चल रहा था, जो उसके कंप्यूटर नहीं थे वो सही है, ठीक है, उसमें देखना
switch off?
I think somebody has to mute. There is lot of.
Somebody is attending another workshop, I think.
हाँ
So
वो
another
चीज है
meeting.
ना, मतलब तो उसको ये देखो, आप देखो वो कौन से बेटा।
Yeah, thank you, please. Yeah, so here what you're doing, we are having 16 into 0.75 is 12, so 18 into 0 is 0. So in this manner you're having the remembering gate. So all these three gates together constitutes your LSTM, which is a complex architecture. Okay, so this is the beauty of this LSTM. So this is a deep learning neural network, and you can see how the processing is taking place. This is the input neurons you're having, this is the input. Okay, so you can see the triangle represents a gate. This is a forget gate, this is the remembering gate, and this is a selection gate. And you can see you're having A, B, and C. These are some of the inputs that you're having. Okay, you can see here. Okay, so one by one gate you can see here. This is the combined input. Okay, this is a previous input, so it goes through A, and this A is basically a neuron. You can have a log sigmoidal neuron on anything. So basically it helps you in it acts as a gate. Okay, the output of this A, B, and C, like that. So A is for your forgetting gate. Okay, so you can see the the states are being updated once it passes through the forgetting gate, and then you can see how okay, these are all different more inputs. If you're having, the forgetting gate will act accordingly. Okay, so here you can see this is the inputs, that is, these are the B and C are the neurons, and is being connected to the OR gate, that is the remember gate, and again you can see the state is being updated. And similarly you can see yeah, this tan H and this one, again you can see information is being passed over here. This is a selection gate. Okay, and finally we are able to get the output. So this particular unit is a RNN unit. Okay, or I can call it as a, this is deep recurrent neural network unit, or I can say it as a LSTM unit. And in just you replace the LSTM unit with your neuron, which you have studied before, that is nothing but your deep learning neural network. Okay, so now you got an idea, and if you can combine certain things of certain two gates, if you combine, there are some other information is also there. I am slightly rushing it out, so that I have to finish it within the time. This is the architecture you're having. It is basically tells you how it is being interacted. There are different ways you can use alpha, tan H, and all these things. These are some of the structures and formulas that you're having. You can just go through it. This is LSTM. And another thing is that you can see this one, how the architecture is there. You can see this, each box is basically one LSTM unit. Each box, this is a layer. You're having input, output. But it acts like a recurrent neural network, right? So this is, and you can see here, there are two layers are there. One layer and here another layer. You are able to see two sets of recurrent layers are there, or you can say this layer and this layer, two layers, weights of layers. Or you can even consider as this one and consider two layer. So here how many inputs you're having? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inputs are there and 5 outputs are there. So you can have an idea about the architecture. So this architecture consists of 4 inputs and 4 outputs, and the number of layers is 2. Hope you are able to get it. So you can see this is another kind of deep bidirectional RNN, or these are all LSTM units. Now you can see how many layers you are having. Sorry, this is how many layers you are having, and here you can see the input is sent, the output is obtained. Okay, in this manner you can see here it's a bidirectional because you can process it in any manner, so that is a beauty. Okay, so these are some of the structure, because I cannot go too much into the you know deep learning neural network thing, but I want to come into an application. So I use a demand response application here, you know. So what is this concept? Why we want to make intelligent? We basically want, we always say we need smart grid. Every operation should be smart enough to do the job and all these things, you know. I'm not going to explain all these things. Maybe you can refer my paper, but I'll tell you what is that, you know, that is involved in the decision making when it comes to your economic demand response management. You know, economic demand response management is some concept, you know, basically that takes place in the demand side. You know, if you can say generation, transmission, distribution, so it takes in the distribution side. Okay, so basically what you do, we will try suddenly, you know, sometimes, you know, the load will be, the peak load will be there, and we have to go for scheduling. We may go for uh, you know, power cuts, you know, especially during peak time. We are able to see the power cuts from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. and all, you know, that time, you know, all the lighting load will be there, and you can expect power cuts. One area fully the power cut is gone, you know, one area. Okay, you know, you won't be having any power, and somehow, you know, it's a generator, right? It has to be, you know, performed well, and it's something like pulling like a bullock cart, you know, this generator. It's not that easy. Okay, so let us assume that, even let us assume that you're having two generating units. Okay, no, one generating unit is 100 megawatt, another is 50 megawatt. Suppose you are having 110 megawatt is the demand. How you cater? You have to make both the generating unit, both the 100 and megawatt and 100 megawatt and 50 megawatt, both the things we have to operate. If the demand has to be satisfied is 110 megawatt. Suppose if we can, the 10 megawatt, if you can cut it, okay, somewhere you can ask your customers to cut, or you know, uh, remove the connection to these loads, at least 10 megawatt. You know, you can say, you know, let us assume each customer the distribution side is able to give delta megawatt. Let us assume, let us assume there are 1 million houses, and you add it all together, definitely you can take this one 10 megawatt you can manage. So it will be like, you know, instead of operating 150 megawatt unit, you just operate only 100 megawatt. In a way, it is both a win-win situation for both the you know, the distribution company and the generation company also. At the later stage, because these customers has participated in the program, such that whenever I ask them to, you know, curtail the some percentage of their connected load, they have done it. So in a later stage, I give them some benefit, because a friend in need is a friend indeed. You know, whenever you're having something manageable, if you do it, that is worth. Okay, so at later stage, I am just you know, giving double the power which he has given to him. Some kind of benefits I'm giving to the customer. So in a way, the customer is so happy, the generating company is so happy, the distribution company is so happy, and it's a win-win situation. All the stakeholders in that particular organization is happy, and you're able to get profit. So that is the kind of things that we are doing in the, sometimes you have to flatten the peak of the load curve. Okay, sometimes, you know, we have to shift the distribution by knowing the electricity pricing. You know, the dynamic tariffs are there, it has to be, you know, shifted. Okay, whenever, you know, mostly you can see during the peak period, if you're using a dynamic tariff, you know, the price, electricity price will continuously vary. So if you can schedule these electrical gadgets, for example, you say, you know, washing machine, you know, you say I will put only at 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Why you want to put a washing machine at 6 p.m. to 8 p.m.? Now, during that time, if the price, electricity price is very high, then automatically you will put it in the off tariff period. Maybe from 11 p.m. to morning 5 a.m. you will put the washing machine and you will come. You know, even if somebody tell you please switch off unnecessary electrical gadgets, you know, during the peak time, you will not do it. But when you're bringing some kind of a dynamic pricing based upon supply and demand, Okay, then I think all these things is possible. That is one way of doing, smart way of managing the electricity. So here is one particular problem that we are having. You know, we every organization has given a contractual demand. Beyond that demand, we cannot use it. You know, 2015, 16. You know, in our institute, we are having 200 kVA is the allotted one. Okay, if you are using beyond that limit, then we have to pay penalty. For each unit we have to pay around 700 or 800 rupees. We have to pay 1200 rupees. We have to pay. Okay, so every year what we do, we look at the annual peak, and based upon the annual peak, 10% extra we will add it, and we'll try to make the contractual deal with the TNEB people. Or now it is TANGEDCO, it has been deregulated. So that manner we try to do. So suppose, you know, what is happening, you know, when most of the time, you know, we are paying the penalty being an organization, but we thought how we can overcome this scenario. If you want to overcome this scenario, if you don't want to pay the penalty, you know, one particular area, suppose let us assume is going beyond the contractual demand, one particular area we have to completely switch off. That means one whole hostel or 2-3 hostels will black out. So think about the situation. I don't think that that is not the that is a smart way of, you know, reducing the penalty. I don't think so. You know, instead of that, what if, you know, if you can make some idea that if you can try to schedule these electrical gadgets in such a way that if you can make the load consumption below the contractual demand, then the problem will be solved. So that is the same thing that we are doing. It is in institute that we are trying to do. So here, if you see, I'll just tell the concept. Okay, so in, yes, please. Yeah, so here you're having the contractual demand is basically 2000 kVA for our institute during that time. So what we have done, we used a model even if it goes beyond 20%. What we are trying to do is that in our institute we are having more than 1000 air conditioning units are there. I don't think that if you switch off this air conditioning for 5 minutes or few minutes, I don't think that, you know, the total cooling will go off. There are in a room, let us assume 4 air conditioning unit are there. If 1 or 2 is switched off for some time, I don't think that you know, the complete cooling is lost. And we have to do a mechanism, you know, how much time the cooling is there, and based upon the time you can make an uptime and downtime for this air conditioning unit, and we can on and off this air conditioning unit so that accordingly load can be curtailed instead of, you know, completely blackouting a particular area. That is the idea that we have proposed. This is a kind of study, and we have done partly. We are not able to do it fully, this particular prototype concept. Okay, so here what you have done, whenever the actual demand goes beyond 90%, immediately we will start our preventive strategy. That means what we do, we try to you know, we try to manage. So we are having a tri-vector meter. At every 15 minutes interval, we are able to get the data. Okay, the data is a meter logging data we are getting. So you are able to see this DR is there. So what we have done is, you know, we take 2 inputs. You know, for decision making, it is very important. 2 types of inputs we are considering for decision making. One is the output of a neural network, and another one, the actual load. Actual load, you know, what is at present, we are knowing it. So we will be having some kind of a idea. If you look at it, so these are the number of air conditioning units we are having, and we made some kind of a priority. We are having 110 AC, 1.5 ton AC, 210 AC. Okay, so when what is the penalty we have to pay during that time is 700 rupees. Okay, so if it exceeds beyond 2000 kVA, you can see in certain time you are able to see that the penalty is being you know, it is going beyond some limit. So you can see 377 units it you know, crossed. So 377 into 700, that much penalty we have to pay. You can, it may be in lakhs. Okay, so in our campus during that time we had so much of ACs. We made a kind of study, and partially we have carried out whether these things are working out, and This is the campus structure that you're having. All these ACs are being connected through a communication network. Okay, we use some kind of transceiver. We used all these methods, and you use a back propagation neural network. This is the tri-vector meter that we are having. It captures the load data. If you want to take smart decision, we want to know the data. Okay, so we try to use the back propagation neural network. But what I'll do, I'll try to use a deep neural network or LSTM network, and I'll try to tell you how it can be done. So here the concept is very simple. So if you look at this load curve, you'll be able to understand. So this is the 2000 kVA. If you go beyond this, we will be paying penalty. Based now, if we are going 100 units, if you are crossing, then 100 into 700 we have to pay. That much penalty we have to pay to the TANGEDCO. So what we have done, 90% of the load is kVA. We always say even if we have to take, we know there is no smoke without a fire. Okay, before that itself we'll know whether it will be crossing or not. So we take some 90% of the load, that is a threshold. Once it crosses, then we have to switch on this relays. Relay scheduling has to be done, so that we will, based upon the priority, we'll switch on and off this AC, and we will not continuously penalize these air conditioning units. We'll just keep, because we cannot keep on penalizing one particular air conditioning unit. We will look at all these air conditioning unit and we'll try to do. So for that, one important part is that you are going to take an intelligent decision also based upon the forecasted load. You can see the forecasted load here. So based upon the forecasted load and the actual load, we are able to take some decision, and we are trying to maintain the actual load consumed beyond the 2000 kVA limit, so that we will not pay unnecessary penalty. So this is totally in the area of smart grid environment. So for that, we used a back propagation neural network. We have taken the data, we have taken the demand data, past data. It is a time series data that we have used. It is simply a time series data. Here, if you see, it is time series data, means you will be having a data of every 15 minutes interval we will be having. So we have taken some features. What we have done, we want to predict the next 15 thing we have to predict. Day ahead we have to be, and we want every 15 minutes we want to predict it. So we have taken T-1, T-1, T-3 of the demand of the particular load, and T and T-1, T-2 the preceding day. This is a load. This is a load data, because we are having one series of load signal only we are taken from the data, and we are having another T-1 and T-2 on the same day, exactly 1 week period. So all these features. So one thing is that I want to tell that we have taken some 9 features we have taken. So this back propagation, conventional back propagation neural network is having 9 inputs and 1 output. Hope it is clear, the architecture of the conventional back propagation neural network. So we have done the conventional back propagation neural network, and based upon certain constraints and all these things, we do all these kinds, we explained all these things in the case of DEER algorithm. We are able to make certain kinds of forecasting, and we are able to do it. Okay, this is a maximum demand you're having. This is a modified forecast, actual forecast. In a way, we try to maintain between, if there is no air conditioning unit that is available to participate, then it will give you a siren, and we are bound to pay the penalty, because no way we are not able to adjust, because I cannot switch off the air conditioning unit of the director's chamber and all. But certain chambers, certain labs and certain things and all I can do. Certain servers I cannot do. Computer servers, that is the backbone of data collection in an institute. Okay, certain labs, it needs continuous cooling is necessary. So those kinds of air conditioning unit I cannot schedule, but I can schedule, based upon, the priority I can schedule. So how much it has to be curtailed, I will calculate. Based upon the curtailment, I look at the forecasted load and although the actual load, and I will do. So now what is that I'm going to do here? So yeah, so I'm able to get a good result and things like that. But my job right now In the next, so this is one project that is supported in DST, and this is a paper published. So this paper is basically published using conventional backpropagation neural network. I already told what are the problems with the conventional backpropagation neural network. So before that, what I'll do, so I gave a case study. So basically for all these forecasting applications, we can use the deep neural network. It's an electrical engineering problem also. So what I am now interested is that I just want to show the data collected. Okay, so you just tell me whether it is visible or not. I am opening the data logger. Okay, that in an Excel sheet I am showing you first the data. You are able to see the data here. Some data.
Yeah, it's
Hello?
visible, clear and visible.
Oh, very good. So if you see, you can see the logging data from the data logger, from the tri-vector meter. I am able to get the data right into my system in Excel sheet. Okay, so here you can see every 15 minutes, you know, this is on 2017, 9 means September 9. Okay, so you'll be having 96 slots will be there, because for 24 hours you will be having 96 slots will be the 96 samples you'll be having every 15 minutes. I know the load. Okay, so now you can see these are the inputs, you know, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. So you're having 9 inputs are there, and that is mapped for the load. So at one point of time it is 1332, like that it goes. Okay, you're having so much data, and this data will vary. You know, my aim is not to work out. My aim is to show how it will be implemented in the MATLAB. Okay, so this is the data you're having. Some 1 month data is there up to October 6th you are having. Okay, and each day how many slots you'll be having, how many samples you'll collect for 24 hours, you will be collecting 9 having, and I taken 9 features. I have taken 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, and this is the load. Is it clear? So you know what I'm trying to do now, I'm trying my program. See, you know, when it comes to yeah, so here already this file is there. Okay, and I'm just opening my MATLAB. Please let me know that the MATLAB command is visible or not. Okay, so what I did, this MATLAB has got toolbox. Okay, deep learning toolbox. I am going to use it, and I'm telling it how it is being used. Okay, especially for this LSTM alone. There are two other techniques also is there. You know, mostly you know you can use Python. You know, there are different kinds of you know, software platforms are there. Keras, Jupyter, and all these places you will be having Python routines will be there. I will say that you please use Python, open source software. Okay, because it's already available. Because you know, for me to just explain it very easily, I am using this MATLAB tool I am using. Okay, though you need to know some kind of programming in MATLAB, because I am comfortable, you know, from my BTech converts to research and all these things. I used MATLAB programming and all these things. So I thought that I will be showing the demo how it can be, you know, performed using LSTM neural network. Okay, so that is why I thought that I used this MATLAB than Python. But I will tell you, you please use Python. You know, because it is an open source thing, and there are a lot of platforms of available, open source platforms of available. You can call this routine and you can do it, and that will be good for your machine learning and you know, these applications. So here, if you see what I did, I just called the data. I just call the data from the Excel sheet. This is where I call the data. I cannot explain all the programming things right now because of the limited time. So I made source and the target data. The 9 features is basically the source patterns. Okay, and the target is basically the only one. So you'll be having 9 input features are there and 1 output is there. So by this time you can have an architecture of your LSTM network, of a deep neural network. So you're having 9 inputs and you'll be having 1 output. Okay, so this is the same thing. So in this case, what I done, if you look at the thing, this 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 is nothing but it is mapped to, these input features are mapped to your load at T. Okay, so this is the thing that we had used. So I got all the things, and I just plotted for the whole data. I had plotted the time period of 15 samples and electrical load thing, and I plotted it like that. I will explain to you. So initially what we can do, we can try to take a data of and 96 things are there. We'll take 1 week data. So 96 into 7, how much it will be? 4.
About 780.
672 you'll be having, right? 672. So 1 week data I am taking. Okay, so what I do, I am just having 672 I am taking. Just a second. 672. 1 week data only I am taking. And you can see I am just making this one as some program. 673 I am putting 670. Here also I am putting 673. Because when I'm having lesser data, it will run faster. Okay, that is the reason. So I tried to map the data source and the target. Okay, and I also taken some test data. Test data, I cannot take the same training data. So I started from 673 onwards, and I taken the next day I taken the data as a test data. If I give the next day data, I'll be able to get the next day data. Day ahead I will be able to get. So here the day ahead is 15 minutes load forecasting using LMS tool. This is the actual data that I'm having. This is the test data. This is the source and the target data you're having. So I'm taking 1 week data to forecast day ahead 24 hours, that is 96 slots. So before that I made a simple kind of normalization. I just divided the data by the maximum value. Here the low data is there, it is coming around 1800, 1300 like that. So I just divided by the maximum of maximum number so that all the values will be between 0 and 1. Okay, so I can use a tanh function. By default, I think it is using a tanh function, this LSTM. So this is the X train and this is the Y train. So I made the num futures is equal to 9. This is the number of input data. The number of response is equal to 1. And the number of hidden units, I kept it as 5. I already trained and kept it ready. And here I am using one hidden layer alone. I am using it here. Okay, you can use as many number of hidden layers. Okay, but again, it depends upon trial and error that how we are trying to use it. Okay, so this is the things, and yeah, I'm just using 100 epochs. Epochs means each epoch is one full set of training data is sent in, means then one epoch will be there, and you can calculate for all the every set of training set once goes in one epoch, you calculate the aggregated error in terms of RMSE or loss or whatever maybe, you can try to get it. So loss is basically simply the output minus the actual output minus the desired output. But however, if you want to get RMSE and all, you can calculate, you can get all the squared error, you make the average, and you can do all these things. And finally, once I do the load forecasting, I have to know what is the mean absolute error between the actual forecasted data and the forecasted data. So you can see how these LSTM layers are being used here. So this is the training options. So some kind of a gradient, in how much gradient, the slope of the activation function, initial learning rate. So slowly the learning rate will keep on increasing, maybe, or sometimes it may decreasing. So I'm trying to every epoch by epoch, I can increase the learning rate. Certain kinds of parameters are there. I'm not interested right now discuss all these parameters. And we make some kind of adaptive kind of learning. Every time it may not be same learning. Sometimes even in the morning it will be very fresh learning, but think about 1:30 to the 2:30 session. After lunch, you'll be feeling sleepy. I don't think that you really listen to a lecture. But in the morning, we used to say, Kala Elundavudan Padipu, all these things and all we used to say in Bhartiyar Padal and all these things. Okay, something like this, the learning rate is very important. So we have to put all these parameters here. And I just use the X train and Y train for training. Train network, X train, Y train, very simple. Okay, then finally using the net, I am trying to predict what is Y, that is estimating. I am just giving the tested, once the network is trained, I am just giving the normalized test data into this, and I'm able to forecast. Forecast means I'll be able to get only the normalized data. But again, I have to multiply with the maximum value so that I can get the actual value of the forecasted data. Then I'm trying to plot what is actual and the forecasted data. So here I use only 1 week data, and the next day I am giving so that I will be able to get the data ahead. So this I done with lot of trial and error, and I'm doing it. I'm just running it. You can just check it out. I just given the running. So you're able to see the command prompt, right? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So you can see it here. It takes only 100 epochs, slowly it will come out, because yesterday night only I did the program for you to discuss about this load forecasting. I'm just running this program so that you'll get an idea why it is taking so much time. Yeah, it's running. It's no problem. Once it start running, I'll be the happiest person. So you can see this is for the data. You can see how this data of our institute. So sometimes it is even going beyond the 2000. You can see it here, right? So this is the actual load data that you're having. I just plotted the complete historical data of 1 month I have plotted. So now if you see, you're able to see the screen, the training is not yet started. You're able to see some kind of RMSE and loss. Am I right? You're able to see it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. If you give me a response, then I'll be happy. You know that I'll know. You're able to see some kind of a convergence of RMSE and loss.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now what is happening?
Yeah, can I interrupt? What is RMSE, please? I'm sorry, I missed out.
No,
Root mean square.
Mean square error. Root mean square error.
Okay.
And this loss is just the actual output minus the desired output. That's all. Okay. So here, if you see, you know, the training is done. The training is done. Okay, just taken 100 epochs, and immediately after that, the training, you can see it here. You know, I'm also doing the testing also. Once the testing is done, you can see here. I also calculated the. If you see the program, I also calculate the what is the mean absolute error. You're able to see the mean absolute error. So the mean absolute error is basically, if you open the command window, you can see it is coming around. How much it is coming? It is coming around 47.5731. See, there is training error is there, and also forecasted error is also there. You know, both are different. There is two types of error. One is a training error. That is what your RMSE and loss. Okay, but after training, you know, you're trying to find out the error difference between your forecasted and actual. So that is your mean absolute error, that is 47.5731. You can see the forecasted one, how close it is. I think that I have plotted here. You can see it here. You can see here. You can mute the thing. You can see this is the load. You can see the legend. You can please mute your mic. Yeah, so you can see the forecasted one here. You can see the forecasted one here, and the actual load is also there. You can see how close it is. You can find it out, and you can also see the error. Mean absolute error is 47.7311. But what I'm trying to do, instead of giving 1 week data, you know, now I'm just cutting all the things. Instead of giving the 1 week data, what if I give 2 weeks data? It's all trial and error. No, you have to really do. If it is 2 weeks data, how much it will be? 672 plus into 672 plus 672. It will be 14, 1. So it will be 1344. Suppose I take 2 weeks data to predict the next day. So I'm having 96 samples into 14. That will be equal to 1344. So here I am trying to make some adjustment, that is 1345. 1345. Okay, so here you know, what I'm trying to do, I'm just checking, is there any possibility, suppose if I'm taking 2 weeks data and predict the next day, whether there is some kind of improvement I am checking. Again, it is again trial and error only. I'm again running for 100 epochs. Okay, so I can run it for 100 epochs. Let us see what is happening here. Okay, so the previous absolute error is 47.5731. 47.5731. So now let us see how this error is taking, how this training is taking place. It will take place only, few minutes it will take place. Few minutes itself it will run. I not given a deep architecture, otherwise my laptop will crash. Okay, so I'm not giving too much of data. So this is the historical data that is being plotted. Okay, the data also it's shown. Okay, now let us see how the training is taking place. Okay, so the training has started. So I made the epochs visible for every 10 epochs, or every 10 epochs I think it is visible. No, every 5 epochs I think it is visible. Anyhow, you can see the error is coming down. One is root mean square error, another one is a loss. Loss is simply the output minus the forecast, and root mean square is the error of all the output neurons. You have to get it and do the root mean square error. So I'm just taking 100 neurons only. Maybe you can go for 1000 and all these things. Okay, so here you can see. So the error is 57. Okay, so I thought that it will reduce, so but it has increased. So I feel that a 1 week data itself is enough. Again, don't just here I just tried just like that. For one time I tried. Again, whenever the weights are initialized, in most of the cases the weights, it's a already available tool. The weights will be randomly initialized to start with, to start the training. So if you can do some kind of a training, more number of statistical analysis, then you will be able to get a better average. So you will be able to get an average mean absolute error. So if you can depend upon the average mean absolute error, I think your forecasting accuracy will be very good, and it will be definitely useful for all our applications. So I'm just stopping it here right now. There are so there are different types of load flow. It's not just low forecasting. You are having electricity price forecasting. You are having again short term, long term. It all depends upon how you feed the data and how you get the output response. Okay, so so I just given a case study. I given an explanation how you can run the. There are different types of forecasting in an electrical grid. Electricity demand you can forecast, you can close electricity price, you can forecast solar wind generation and all these things. And if you can really use, this is for time series data, this is not for convolution neural network. Convolution neural network, you can use it for classification and all this purpose. So I'm just stopping it right now. I hope that you got some idea. Okay, so if you're having any questions, you can ask. So I started with explaining the biological neural network to artificial neural network, and from artificial neural network I jumped to the disadvantages of the artificial neural network, and then I jumped to what do you mean by recurrent neural networks, especially the deep neural networks. Then I jumped to the complex architecture. An example I taken, that is LSTM. Okay, then I immediately made a case study where we are using these kinds of forecasting in a real-time problem, and then immediately I use the LSTM in MATLAB, and I also showed you the data, and you can forecast it. I think that's all how you can use deep learning neural networks in forecasting application, especially for an electrical engineering application. Thank you. If you're having any doubt, you can ask me, please.
So faculty, if you're having any doubt, you can unmute and ask your doubts.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Very well done, Professor Simon. Very
Yes,
interesting.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Especially you have taken a very live example of the college premises and 2000 kVA. Just one question. Of course, I would not be able to really go into the processes, various neural networks you have explained. I am little beginner in those areas. But
Yes.
one result I want to ask.
Yeah.
So how often out of the 2000 kVA demand that is available for you, how often or how many times in a week you overshot, and what are the actions you are taking to see that that overshot does not take place?
Sir, actually, it is not implemented fully. Okay, this is just a part of a DST project that we have done. So, you know, we just connected the real-time relays and everything only with few, my own air conditioning unit, my lab's air conditioning unit, and my friend's air conditioning units only, to understand whether, you know, within the campus, whether it can be switched on and off. Okay, so it is not fully implemented. Only it is both hardware and the software platform together we had implemented. Okay, sir. So because we had some administration problem to implement for all the air conditioning unit, I think it's very difficult with the available funding that I had. So I'm not in a way to do it. But when it comes to the how it is violating, how many times it violating, maybe in a year, in a month, maybe especially during the summer time, I'm able to see, especially, you know, during the fag end of the you know, examinations and things like that, I'm able to see it is violating the limits. Maybe weekly once it is happening, once or twice it is happening. Especially, you know, during the whenever the load is consumed, there is more. You know, more students are there. Especially, I think February, March, I'm able to see it is violating.
Thank you, and I think I couldn't have got a better answer than this. You have tried your best, and I would only suggest that if there is a solar panel things also in your premises.
Yeah. So even
maybe,
solar panel, yeah, that also I had forecasted. Okay, so because you know, so I can directly get the. We are having a 100 kilowatt solar plant is there. We are having a lecture hall complex, and we are able to get the data. And we are able to get the data, and we can also forecast using that data. We are also getting the live solar irradiation data, and using the live load data also, we can able to predict or forecast the next day solar output. So that is also possible, because that will be very useful in our power system planning activities. So that also I could have done it, because I thought that, you know, I can explain in a demand response smart grid environment how it can be used. I thought that I taken this example. That's it.
No, I was not telling that. So if you can kind of hybrid this solar and this thing at a particular time, the solar is getting on or off, something so like that.
That will be also really good, because if you can model the same problem using the solar data, it will be really good, because I get some input, you know, what is I can subtract the load demand, and also the what is the input that you are getting from the solar. So I can forecast that, and I can have a better decision model I can build upon this. It is possible. It is possible.
Thank you very much, Professor Simon.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
So one faculty called Revati, she has asked a doubt in the chat box.
Yeah, please. Okay, chat box I have to look at. Just a second.
She has asked like how we could judge the data is trained and tested correctly. Could you throw some light towards this, sir?
See, basically, you know, when it comes to these networks, you know, you have to do trial and error method. You have to do a lot of trials with the data. You know, suppose if I run again the same program, because you know, the weights are initialized randomly, you know, there is certain kinds of learning strategy that is taking place in these decision models. Okay, so it will keep on varying, but if you can make some more number of trials, you will be able to get to know the convergence and a better model. And by selecting the right kind of features, you need not use all the complete data. You just pick up the right kind of data. That is very, very important. You know, that is what we call as feature selection. Okay, if you can use the right kind of data, and if you can train, the model will be better also. So if for the same model, I could have used solar also, because solar also indirectly affecting, right, the load. Okay, if I can use the solar data also, I think the model performance will be a bit more accurate. You're getting it. So I think it all depends upon how you choose the data and how you select the architecture. Okay, and even during training, as I told, we have to validate whether the training is taking place properly or not. So, and you have to choose the right kind of activation function. All these things are important. So in order to get a better model and to understand whether training is done properly or not. Yeah.
Professor Simon, one thing came to my mind. This finally,
Yes.
after the 1 week data, you got an error of approximately 47%. After
Yes,
the
sir. Yes, sir.
after the 2 week data, you got an error of something like 52 or 56.
Yesterday when I run, I got is 36.
No,
So
I'm just
no.
wondering if you have more data, the error should be less. And what does this error actually indicate?
Sir, the error actually indicate how accurate is your forecast with respect to the actual output. I can tell what will be tomorrow's load by today itself. So tomorrow we don't know. Nobody knows tomorrow what will happen. It can be any uncertainties. So the error will change. But however, when I'm doing the model, I am trying to assume that already I'm having all the data. This is not a correct thing. When you try to use it in real time, tomorrow's load I don't know. So when I know tomorrow's load, I can plan well ahead. Even for unit commitment, even for dynamic economic dispatch, I based upon the load forecasted only, I can commit my generating units. Even in distribution generation also I can do the same thing. So even if you want to schedule, if I know the electricity price forecasting, I can schedule the gadgets or the equipments in my house properly, so that I can reduce my tariff, so that I can get some electricity savings. So all these things are possible. And only thing is that when I tried to run the program yesterday using the 2 week data, I got 36. So I thought that it will be reduced, but again it can be done only through a lot of trials. I have to do just given only one time I had done the trial before you using the 1 week data. If I can do for some 20 times, I do it and I take the average mean absolute error. That is what is important. Not just one trial, you cannot make a decision. You have to take more, you have to do more number of trials, and you have to take the average mean absolute error. That you can, then it will be good. Whether you have to use how much data, whether you have to use 1 week data or 2 weeks data or 1 month data, will it be good? Okay, or sometimes 6, so all these things are there. So basically these neural networks and all these things, it is data dependent. It is not, I can say it is system dependent. It is not system independent. It is system dependent. The model's accuracy depends upon the system. Okay, it is system. These networks, these models are all system independent. Okay, that means it is data dependent. That's all. I don't know. I
So
really
fine.
confused you. Yeah.
No. Finally, I will come to this. Sorry to make you wait like this.
Yeah.
Supposing I had a prediction of 100 units tomorrow. For tomorrow, I had a figure of say 100 kilowatt or 100 kVA something.
Yeah.
Now this error tells me that it is going to be off the track by around 40%, 47%.
Yeah.
That means that means tomorrow the load will be 147. Is it?
See, tomorrow nobody
in
can.
Yeah.
No, in real time, tomorrow we cannot, have. To some extent, you can say that, because of this data based upon the input of today, it is telling that tomorrow the output may be affected. That is what you're getting. It need not be the same. Whenever it comes to the real time market, always there is a difference between the actual and the forecasted load. That gap is being taken care by the balancing market. The balancing market is basically carried out with the help of ancillary services. What they do, they try to see that gap is being filled. So whenever it is more, it is not an issue. But whenever it is less, we have to satisfy the customer, so that we have to supply reliable power. Then there is the gap. Always there will be gap. It is not accurate. Now, forecasting means tomorrow we cannot forecast. If you are able to forecast better, we are lucky. Whenever you plan, it's something like sharpening the axe, and we are able to we can cut the tree better. That is a philosophy in this. So I think even if it is 40% error, okay, with 40% tomorrow only we know whether it is really 40% or not, but we can get some idea. Then without getting any idea, we'll get some idea and we can be prepared. What are the units to be committed? What are the units not to be committed? All these things we can have some idea. So it is very good for planning. Power system planning, all the electrical planning is very good.
Sir, one more question we have received in the chat box, sir.
Yes, please. Can you just read it?
Yes, sir, I am reading, sir. Actually, Revati ma'am has asked like, can we access solar radiation data online from NIT Trichy, sir? Is there any provision?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. But I think some process may be there. I don't know. We have not come to that level. I don't know whether we can give the data or something like that. It is nothing. Basically, it's just for 100 kVA, 100 kilowatt. You'll know the data every 5 seconds. I really don't know whether I can give it or not. And again, I have to ask the permission to get it also. Maybe from the electrical maintenance office, maybe you can call, or I think you can. There is one person, another professor, Selvan. I think you must be knowing. Madam's friend, Dayalini madam's friend. You can ask him. He is the in-charge associate dean. You can mail him, Selvan sir, and if he can help in any of the things, you can do it. You can get the data.
Okay, sir. So thank you, Dr. Simon, sir, for your very effective session in spite of your busy schedule. I'm sure the faculty must have enjoyed your session with lots of information and live examples. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the wonderful session.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.